Hello and welcome to the important chapter of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Now, you would find that many things, many small subtopics in the Parliament chapter, the President chapter, and this chapter on the Prime Minister would be overlapping. Do not get perturbed over that. Do not get worried about that. It will actually help you in revision because these two are the legislature and the executive, and obviously there is a bit of an overlap as far as different points are concerned. So घबराने की कोई बात नहीं है, ये नहीं सोचना कि ये इसी चैप्टर में होना चाहिए था. Why is it in this chapter? Nothing of the sort. There would be a sense of overlap. For example, ordinances would in fact be there in the Parliament chapter, the President chapter most definitely, and even in the Prime Minister chapter, just to give you an example. So shall we do a Shubharam? Let's get started. Okay, so we are going to now do the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers chapter, Civics with CSWS, the place where you will get civics simplified and in a manner that you can understand and relate it to the India in which you live, right? After all of you are going to be voting in just about 3 years from now, right? So we need to understand the various concepts. Let's start with this picture gallery of India's prime ministers. All those prime ministers who have ruled India, who have been India's prime minister, ruled is not the right word, for 5 years or more. The first, of course, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru from 1947 till his demise in May 1964, followed by Indira Gandhi, who ruled first in the late 60s, 70s, the emergency years, till she was defeated in 1977 by the Janata Party. She came back to power in 1980 and was prime minister till her assassination in October 1984, followed by her son Rajiv Gandhi, who was prime minister from 84 to 89 till his defeat in the 89 general elections. Then PV Narasimha Rao on your extreme right, known as India's liberalization man from 91 to 96, followed by two coalition governments of H.D. Deve Gowda and Gujral, also a short-lived Vajpayee government till Mr. Vajpayee came back to head the first BJP-led government, NDA government in 1999, was prime minister till 2004. And then towards the bottom right, Dr. Manmohan Singh, prime minister from 2004 to 2014, and followed by Mr. Narendra Modi, who has been prime minister since 2014. Now, let's get to the meat of this particular chapter. The Prime Minister is appointed by the President. See, civics में terms काफी जरूरी हैं. कौन सा word, कौन सा शब्द कहां पर यूज होता है, which word or phrase is used where is very important. I'm not saying, I'm not advocating that you need to rote learn everything, but the more times you read the chapter, listen to the videos, read our notes, you would get a hang of it, right? So the Prime Minister is appointed by the President. All the other ministers of the Council of Ministers are also appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. This phrase is extremely important. This is a key phrase. The Council of Ministers, with the Prime Minister at the head of the Council of Ministers, aids and advises. Aids matlab help karta hai, salah deta hai to the President of India. And the President, in accordance with this advice, will act, right? That's what the Constitution of India says, because it follows what the British government, British way of parliament is. And such advice is given by the Council of Ministers according to the Constitution. Iski jo barikiyan hain, the minutiae, the details of this, we will deal with it later on in this particular chapter. The President, as we have seen in the President chapter, is a nominal head, though all the executive decisions are taken in his name. For example, if an ambassador is to be appointed to, say, France or Germany, the decision, the appointment will be made in the name of the President. It will not be made in the name of the Cabinet Secretary or the Foreign Affairs Minister. No, it will be made in the name of the President, because it's the President who is the head of the country, in name the executive head of the country, though the real head is the Prime Minister, right? So the powers are exercised by the Council of Ministers under the leadership of the Prime Minister. Next, let's come to the tenure. Now, what does tenure mean? Tenure means kitne saal ke liye Prime Minister is in office. The term of office is 5 years. But of course, conditions apply in the sense that if the no confidence motion is passed against the Prime Minister, as a result of which the government falls, then the Prime Minister has to resign, like it happened in 1997 when H.D. Devegowda had to go, like it happened in 1998 when I.K. Gujral had to go. So in that kind of a scenario, the Prime Minister does not have the full term of 5 years. 5 years also because 5 years ke baad Lok Sabha elections have to be compulsorily held because the term of a Lok Sabha is only 5 years. Can the president appoint anyone as the Prime Minister? Of course not. What happens is, after the Lok Sabha elections, whichever party secures a majority in the Lok Sabha, that party goes to the president and says that we have elected so and so as our leader. The leader of that parliamentary party goes on to become the Prime Minister. The president invites that particular person to form the government and be the Prime Minister. The oath of office and secrecy is sworn, he's given to that particular person as the Prime Minister. And then the Prime Minister says, I want these 20 people, these 30 people as my ministers, and the president administers the oath of office and secrecy. Administers the oath of office and secrecy is the phrase. Now, the other question is keystone of the cabinet arc. What does it mean? It's a very British old style way of English speaking. Well, it's known as the keystone of the cabinet arc because he has absolute powers in the formation of the Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister decides who will be the Prime Minister, who will be the minister in his cabinet, and who will be not a minister, and what portfolio that particular minister will hold. So he has absolute powers. Absolute powers matlab complete powers the Prime Minister has, and that's why he's known as the keystone of the cabinet arc. Okay, let's move forward. About the Council of Ministers. Now, the ministers are individually responsible to the President of India. And why is that so? Because it is the President who is administering the oath of office and secrecy to each one of those ministers, right? The ministers are answerable to Parliament for their departments. Now, isme do baatein dhyan rakhiye. Answerable means any question that is asked either in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha about a particular department, let's say the tourism ministry, then the tourism minister has to reply to those questions in either house of parliament pertaining to his or her department. The prime minister and the ministers hold office during the pleasure of the president. ये pleasure नहीं होता जैसे कुछ लोग pronounce करते हैं, pleasure होता है. Pleasure of the president. Is the statement true or false? Well, technically, according to the constitution, yes. But in reality, the prime minister does not hold office during the pleasure of the government, in the sense that if the prime minister has the majority in the Lok Sabha and his party has elected him as the leader of the parliamentary party, then he will have to be sworn in, or he will have to be appointed as the prime minister by the president. Similarly, the ministers, while they're individually responsible to the president because he's the one who's administering the oath, but their continuance in office depends more on the prime minister. Agar prime minister chahega ki is minister ko drop kar do, so the minister will have to be dropped or sacked if he refuses to resign. Okay, I hope you're understanding. See, that's the way the constitution is made. जो लिखा गया है वो completely true नहीं है, जो नहीं लिखा गया है वो भी true हो सकता है. So there are lots of ifs and buts which you need to understand as students of civics and political science. Okay, let's now move forward about the Council of Ministers and this new term called the cabinet. ये cabinet भला क्या है? Now, when the Constitution of India was adopted in the year 1950, drafted by Mr. B.R. Ambedkar and his team, it did not contain the word cabinet. The word cabinet was introduced into the Constitution of India in 1979 as by the 44th Amendment. 44th Amendment matlab, every time the Constitution is amended, it gets a number. So it was the 44th time that the Constitution of India was being amended. And this time the amendment was to introduce the word cabinet. And the word cabinet was introduced to say that national emergency can be proclaimed only if the president receives the decision of the cabinet in writing. In writing. It cannot be an oral communication to the President of India, as it happened apparently during 1975 when emergency was declared, when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister and Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed was the President of India. You need to necessarily have the cabinet decision in writing sent to Rashtrapati Bhavan for the president to declare emergency in the country. Okay, so that is when the word cabinet was first time used, and it made the distinction between the cabinet and the council of ministers very clear. Okay, now let's look at the categories of ministers. There are three categories of ministers. And I've put it, let me just move the screen a little up. Now, cabinet ministers, ministers of state, and deputy ministers. Now, as far as deputy ministers are concerned, though it's part of your syllabus, I must tell you that these days, for many years in the cabinet, union cabinet, or even the state cabinet to a large extent, deputy ministers are not made. It's only cabinet ministers or ministers of state. Lekin ministers of state mein ministers of state with independent charge bhi hote hain, and normal ministers of state bhi hote hain. Yahan par main ek aur baat bata दूं. Please do not get confused between ministers of state and state ministers. State ministers will be ministers in a particular state. Like, for example, the agriculture minister of Rajasthan, the sports minister of Tamil Nadu, right? The industries minister of Odisha, right? But the ministers of state are at the central level. Okay, please understand this distinction. Now, cabinet ministers are a smaller cohesive group. The cabinet ministers are part of the council of ministers. Council of ministers includes cabinet ministers, ministers of state, and deputy ministers. Lekin cabinet ministers are part of the council of ministers. They are a smaller cohesive group. They include the trusted and senior ministers and colleagues of the prime minister who hold important portfolios like home, like foreign affairs, like finance, like defense, like industry, like railways, right? And the cabinet ministers are part of the cabinet meetings who decide the policy and the programs of the government of India. Understood? Who are the ministers of state? और इसमें अभी दो categories हैं, जैसे मैंने कहा, ministers of state and ministers of state with independent charge. Let me explain with the help of an example. Let's say the home minister is there. Okay, the home minister has been given two ministers of state. Two ministers of state have been sworn in by the president, right? Administered the oath of office and secrecy. और portfolio allocation में कहा गया कि ये दोनों ministers of state will be in the home affairs department, will be there, ministry. Okay. The cabinet minister who is in charge of home, he may say that minister number A will handle subjects of Naxalism, northeastern states, and let's say the paramilitary forces like BSF, CRPF, Indo-Tibetan Force, etc. Okay. Minister of State number 2 will hold charge of things like jails, passports, which is also linked to the internal security, right? These two ministers will report to the cabinet minister. Cabinet minister, jo home minister hai, union home minister hai, he is in charge, he's the boss for these two ministers of state. They report to him. Their idea is to assist him in the running of the home ministry. Samajh mein aa gaya? Now the other category of minister of state with independent charge. Now there will be some portfolios which may not be given a cabinet rank, like home, defense, finance, vagara. They are very important. They will obviously be given a cabinet rank. There could be some ministries, like let's say tourism, let's say sports, which may not, tribal welfare, social welfare, which may not be given a cabinet rank minister. However, you will appoint someone who is not as senior as a cabinet minister, but not as junior as a minister of state also, as a minister of state with independent charge. Okay. So what will happen is that particular, let's say the sports ministry, will not have a cabinet minister, but a minister of state with independent charge, which means he does not have a boss in the cabinet, but his boss is the prime minister and he will report directly to the prime minister. Samajh mein aa gayi baat? So some may hold independent charge, some may not hold independent charge. I hope I've explained in detail. They do not attend cabinet meetings. Normally, ministers of state do not attend cabinet meetings, but they could be invited. Now, under what circumstances they could be invited? Let's say, for example, the tourism policy of the country is going to be decided. Now, how can you have a decision on the tourism policy of India without the tourism minister being part of the discussion? Hai na? So in such a case, and there is no cabinet minister directly in charge for tourism, so what will happen is that the Minister of State with independent charge of tourism ministry, he will be invited to that particular cabinet meeting where this decision on the tourism policy is going to be taken. Okay, he will be part of the discussion and the decision will be taken. This does not mean कि अगले कोई भी cabinet meeting में that minister will come directly. No, only on invitation. Understood? The deputy ministers, who as I said, these days are not sworn in. They assist the cabinet ministers. Pehle during Nehru's time, Shastri's time, the deputy ministers used to be there. They assist the cabinet ministers. They do not attend cabinet meetings and they are not consulted by the prime minister. Prime minister does not consult the ministers of state also. He may or may not consult the minister of state holding independent charge. It may depend on the subject and the need for such a consultation. Okay. I hope this particular part is clear. This is very important. Now let's come to the difference between the Council of Ministers and the Cabinet. Left में Council of Ministers है, right में Cabinet लिखा है मैंने. Okay. Council of Ministers, आप एग्जाम में COM लिख के नहीं आएंगे, पूरा Council of Ministers लिख के आएंगे. यहाँ पे because of paucity of space जगह कम है करके मैंने COM लिखा है. Council of Ministers is a larger group. Okay, obviously because it includes everyone. Prime Minister may not consult everyone in the Council of Ministers, right? Council of Ministers rarely meets. In fact, it never meets. It has the power on paper. What does it mean? According to the Constitution, the President acts on the advice of the Council of Ministers. Lekin asli power to cabinet ki hai, because cabinet meetings happen regularly, once every 2 weeks generally. It is a cabinet which is in effect advising the President through the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister represents the Council of Ministers, but it is not the decision of the entire Council of Ministers, but the cabinet, which is a smaller and cohesive group, which is taking all the policy decisions on behalf of the government, right? I hope this distinction is clear. This is an important examination-based examination question, okay? What can be the size of the Council of Ministers? Not more than 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha, not Parliament, Lok Sabha. Now, this was done in 2003 by the 91st Amendment. 44th Amendment हुआ 1979 में, ये amendment है 91st Amendment in 2003. So वहां पे तब decide किया कि Council of Ministers, because jumbo size Council of Ministers बनने लगे थे, especially in the states, क्योंकि political corruption बहुत हो गया. आपको दूसरी पार्टी को तोड़ना हो, आप बोलेंगे कि मैं आपके 6 लोगों को मंत्री बना देता हूं, तो उसका ग्रीड दिखाया गया. That carrot was dangled that I will make 6 of your MLAs or MPs as ministers, and your size of the ministry kept increasing, right? What does happen when the size of the ministry keeps on increasing? Because every minister has to be provided with secretarial staff, PA, PS, security guards, office, phone bills, cars, transportation, everything, right? Who pays for all that? You and me, right? Your parents and me, the taxpayers' money. So in order to, one, curb political corruption, prevent defections from other parties with the lure of ministerial birth, and number 2, to curb governmental expenditure, it was decided in 2003 that not more than 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha, in the case of states, of the state assembly, you cannot have the Council of Ministers more than that, okay? So if the strength of the Lok Sabha is 543, 15% of 543 can be the maximum strength of the Council of Ministers. It can be less. If the Prime Minister does not want to fill in the entire Council of Ministers, it's his prerogative. But it cannot be more than that. So that is a check on the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister cannot exceed, he cannot, just because he's the keystone of the cabinet arc, does not mean that his Council of Ministers can go up to 25% of the strength of the Lok Sabha. No, even that he cannot exceed. Okay. Let's come to the oath of office. Every minister is administered an oath of office and secrecy. wherein he or she says that I will promises to bear full true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India. He swears to uphold sovereignty and integrity of India. I will not do anything which will be anti-India, anti-national, and faithfully discharge all his duties and responsibilities without kind of, having any kind of ill will towards anybody, any kind of discrimination nahi karega. All that is part of the oath, which is there in your textbook. You may do well to remember it, but aaj tak kabhi nahi hua ki pura oath ko question answer ke roop mein पूछा जाए. I don't know whether it will be done in your school test, but generally board examination में तो कभी पूछा नहीं गया. But you will do well to know the keywords of the oath of office and secrecy. Okay. Now let's do a couple of test questions. Correct? At whose mercy can a minister stay in office? बताओ. At whose mercy can a minister stay in office? मैंने क्या बोला था? That ministers are individually responsible to the President of India. So on paper, according to the Constitution of India, it's the president. But चूंकि आपको subjective question answer है, तो आप पूरा detail में लिख सकते हैं. You can write it in detail that in reality it depends on the Prime Minister, because only on his advice the president can sack a minister or accept a resignation, the resignation of a minister. Understood? Hariram Awasthi was sworn in as Union Transport Minister in January 2022, but he was forced to resign in July 2022. Bala kyun? Why? Now you look at the dates, January, July, 6 months. What did I tell you? That a non-MP can be made a minister by the president on the recommendation of the Prime Minister. But the condition is that that particular person has to become an MP of either the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha within a period of 6 months. है ना? So within 6 months, the person has to become an MP. By chance, like in this case, Hariram Awasthi, 6 महीना तो काम किया as transport minister, but in July 2022 तक he could not become an MP of either the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. Then the only option for him is to resign as minister. He cannot be a minister unless he is an MP, member of parliament of either the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. समझ में आ गया? आगे चलें. Let's now move to the functions of the cabinet, basically policy making, administrative and legislative. Okay. It is responsible for formulating all the policies of the government of India. It formulates both external as well as internal policies. What does it mean? External matlab, what will be India's relations with the United States of America, with Pakistan, with China, with Sri Lanka. It is the cabinet which formulates the policies. It formulates the internal policy. What will be our policy on Kashmir B? What will be our policy on COVID vaccination? What will be our industrial policy? What will be our fertilizer policy? What will be our tourism policy? All this is decided by the cabinet. External and internal policies. All ministers have to consult the cabinet. I am the agriculture minister. I cannot independently decide on a major policy of the government without consulting the cabinet. The cabinet has to okay the agriculture policy, and then the implementation is my responsibility. Implementation is my responsibility, but the cabinet has to give me the go ahead for that policy. Collective decision making and collective responsibility. Now this is important. ध्यान से सुनिए. It means that once a decision is taken by the entire cabinet, it cannot be criticized by an individual minister outside. Let's say the Pakistan policy is being discussed. Okay. The foreign minister has a particular viewpoint. I am the defense minister. I have a different viewpoint. I can debate with him in the cabinet meeting. I can discuss with him. I can argue with him in the cabinet meeting. I can tell him that I don't agree with him. But once a decision is taken, maybe the decision is taken according to what he is saying, then I will have to fall in line, which means I have to obey it. I cannot go outside and keep cribbing. अरे बेकार policy बनाई है, ये कोई policy है, उसको कुछ नहीं मालूम है. I cannot talk like that. I have to, in fact, defend the policy outside, that this is the policy of the government of India. This is what we will do, even though personally I may have differed with it inside the cabinet meeting. That is collective decision making. Any policy decision is the collective responsibility of the entire cabinet, which is why if it is kind of criticized, or if a no confidence motion is moved in the Lok Sabha, etc., the entire ministry has to quit, not just one minister. Everybody is equally responsible for every policy decision made by the government of India. They swim and sink together. This is a phrase which is used for the cabinet. So please remember this. Jeena yahan, marna yahan. Saath mein jiyenge, saath mein marenge. That kind of a thing. Okay. Let's move to the administrative functions. The decisions taken by the cabinet are communicated to the ministries. Whatever, like say something related to say COVID vaccination, in which various ministries will have to coordinate. So the health ministry is there, the information ministry, the defense ministry, the foreign ministry, the civil aviation ministry, and it will be communicated to every ministry that this is the decision we want your ministry to do XYZ kind of thing. Say COVID ke saath maybe sports ministry ka koi lena dena nahi hai, lekin you want the sports people, eminent sports people, to take the vaccine shot so that, you know, it gives confidence to the rest of the people. So you will communicate to the sports ministry that this is the decision of the government of the cabinet, and the cabinet wants the sports ministry to coordinate with various sports persons, cricketers, hockey players, badminton players, football players, to do this kind of a campaign. So it is communicated. It coordinates the function of ministries. I'll give a same example. Say, agar 6-7 ministries ka involvement ho, so there has to be some coordination. That job is done by the cabinet. Cabinet secretariat is headed by the cabinet secretary, who is the senior most IAS officer in the country at any given point in time. All the appointments are decided by the cabinet and made in the name of the president. Is baat ko hamesha dhyan rakhiyega. So as I said, ambassador to Paris, ambassador to Moscow, ambassador to Indonesia, ambassador to Colombo, ambassador to Canberra, every appointment is made. Judges ka, governors ka, governor of Odisha, governor of Bihar, that appointment will be made by the President of India, by the cabinet in the name of the President of India. Okay. What are the legislative functions? The cabinet formulates and introduces bills in parliament. It pilots the bills and sees them through. For instance, if there is a bill which has to be introduced, say the anti-dowry bill, I'm just giving a very random example, anti-dowry bill. So let's say the women and child welfare minister will be said that you will be piloting the bill, means you will be responsible for ensuring that the bill passes through both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. You will introduce the bill, answer all the doubts that the members may have, give clarifications, whatever, and then once a bill is passed, then automatically it will be sent to the president, which becomes the law of the land. Amendments to the constitution, जितने भी amendments हुए हैं, मैंने बात की 44th की और 91st की, ऐसे कई सारे amendments हो चुके हैं through the last 75 odd years of India's independence. In fact, not for 75 years, because only after the constitution was made that the amendments would be made. So 75 minus 3. Then you will have amendments to the constitution also will be decided by the cabinet. They prepare the president's address, the president who addresses parliament, the first after the every Lok Sabha election, and also the budget session. It is not the president who sits and writes a speech. It is the cabinet which prepares the speech, and the president only reads it out. Issuing ordinances when one of the houses of parliament is not in session, that job is also done by the cabinet. Okay. How does parliament control the executive? Through a no confidence motion. Actually, not so much parliament, but more of Lok Sabha. Adjournment motion, rejecting a government bill, passing an amendment to the bill against the wishes of the government, voting a cut in the budget. All these ways parliament can control executive. Is question ko is tarah se bhi pucha ja sakta hai. In how many different ways can loss of confidence be displayed or expressed by the Lok Sabha? Okay, so in both ways, this kind of a question can be asked. Let's now move to the functions and the relationship between the position and the powers of the Prime Minister with relationship to the President, the Cabinet, Parliament, and of course, the entire country. He's the principal advisor to the President. This can come as a 1-mark question. So please do not make the mistake of saying advisor to the president or press secretary to the president or the vice president or the speaker of the Lok Sabha. The prime minister is the principal advisor to the president of India. He's a nominal head. The prime minister is the real head. He's the link between the president and the council of ministers. He advises the president when the parliament session should be summoned, because prorogue ho jata hai after every session, right? So he's the one who advises the president ki is tarikh se monsoon session can be started. He's the one who advises the president on appointments, as I said, governors ho, ambassadors ho, judges ho, etc. Prime Minister and the cabinet. He's the leader of the cabinet. Now, please don't get confused. He's the leader of the Council of Ministers. He's also the leader of the cabinet, because cabinet is a small part of the Council of Ministers. है ना? He allocates the portfolios. I've explained that in detail. He has the power to select and dismiss. He does not want XYZ as the sports minister. He will sack him, right? So it is him. He will tell the president to accept his resignation or dismiss him if बंदा resign करने को तैयार नहीं है तो. He is, along with the cabinet, coordinates the working of ministers, because he's the ministries, because he's the head of the cabinet also. He resigns, the ministry goes. If the prime minister resigns, for example, as I said, 1997, S.D. Devegowda resigned. He had to go after a no confidence motion. Then I.K. Gujral became the prime minister. It does not mean that all the ministers who were under Devegowda automatically continued as ministers. No, I.K. Gujral took oath as prime minister, and then he selected his ministers, and then they took oath again. They were administered the oath of office and secrecy by the then president. So it is the prime minister goes, the rest of the government falls, irrespective of whether they are a Lok Sabha MP or a Rajya Sabha MP. The ministers goes, fresh government, fresh ministry is Council of Ministers is sworn in. प्राइम मिनिस्टर एंड पार्लियामेंट के बीच में क्या रिलेशनशिप है? ही इज द लीडर ऑफ द लोकसभा, और यहाँ पे मैंने एस्ट्रिक्स मार्क डाल रहा हुआ है, स्टार मार्क. क्यों? नॉर्मली the prime minister, if he is a Lok Sabha MP, he will be the leader of the Lok Sabha. Like Narendra Modi is an MP from Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, so he is the leader of the Lok Sabha. Lekin Dr. Manmohan Singh was a Rajya Sabha MP. So Pranab Mukherjee, being the senior most leader of the Congress party, he was the leader of the Lok Sabha, while Dr. Manmohan Singh was the leader of the Rajya Sabha, because he was a Rajya Sabha MP. You can be either a Rajya Sabha MP or a Lok Sabha MP, hai na? But if the prime minister is a Lok Sabha MP, he automatically becomes the leader of the Lok Sabha. He intervenes in critical issues. कोई भी बहस चल रही हो on important issues, prime minister intervenes. He stands up, and the house is expected to listen to it carefully with rapt attention. He defends the policies of the government. कि हमारी सरकार ने ये निर्णय किया है, and why and how and what does it mean. He defends it, and therefore he is the chief spokesperson of the government in parliament. Okay, that's important. He's the leader of the nation. He represents the nation both within India, outside. When he speaks, it is like India is speaking. He decides on relations with other countries, like, because as I said, he's the head of the cabinet. So obviously he has a major say in what will be our relations with, say, Sri Lanka, what will be our relations with Israel, what will be our relations with Belgium, with Germany, etc. He's also the ex-officio chairperson of organizations like the Niti Aayog, which is like the new planning commission, atomic energy commission, etc. Last two parts, collective responsibility and individual responsibility. Now, under Article 75(3) of the Constitution, the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. Is baat ko please don't get confused. Don't write parliament out there. Collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. Why are they collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha? Because only till such time that that particular ruling party has a majority in the Lok Sabha can it continue being in the government. Hai na? So if it loses majority in the Lok Sabha, it automatically falls. So it's collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. They share the responsibility for policy decisions, right? As I said, even if they differ outside, they have to collectively defend that particular policy. And in the event of a no confidence motion, the entire Council of Ministers also goes. What is individual responsibility? It is individually responsible. Each minister is individually responsible to the President of India, because he is the one who's administering the oath. But the minister is answerable to Parliament for the department under his or her control. Answerable or responsible mein farak hai. I am the communication minister. अगर आप 4G या 5G के ऊपर कुछ क्वेश्चन आए राज्यसभा में या लोकसभा में, irrespective of whether I am a राज्यसभा MP or a Lok Sabha MP, if I am the communications minister, I have to answer questions relating to my ministry. Okay. He's also responsible for breach of oath of secrecy. I say that, in the oath of secrecy, I will not divulge any secret which is against national interest. लेकिन मैंने इधर-उधर अपने दोस्तों को बता दिया, that's a breach of the oath. जो मैंने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पे ओथ लिया है, इट्स अ ब्रीच मतलब उसका उल्लंघन किया है, उसको वायलेट किया है. पर्सनल लैप लाइक करप्शन, मेरा पर्सनल असिस्टेंट या मैं खुद करप्ट कर रहा हूं, पैसे ले रहा हूं फॉर अ पर्टिकुलर पॉलिसी डिसीजन, that's also grounds for dismissal. I should not be doing something like that, right? Departure from official policy, that the official policy is something of the government decided by the cabinet, लेकिन मैं अपनी मनमानी से कुछ भी करता हूं, that's also something which I'm not supposed to do. So under individual responsibility, all these things come. I hope the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers chapter is now clear. Any doubts जो कि होंगे, होने भी चाहिए, please ask. More than happy to address them, because 80 on 80 is our aim in the history and civics paper. 79 on 80 is not acceptable. 80 on 80, और मिलते भी हैं, मिलेंगे भी, हमारे कई स्टूडेंट्स को मिले हैं, आपको भी मिलेंगे, आपको भी मिलने चाहिए. Thank you very much for watching.